Welcome to the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis' 2011 Regional Economic Outlook. My name is Toby Madden. I'm a regional economist. Our forecast and other materials for this briefing can be found on our website, minneapolisfed.org. The agenda for the briefing today is for Rob Grunwald, our associate economist, to provide the 2011 9th District Economic Outlook, but before that, the 2010 9th District Economic Review. And then it'll be my turn to provide the 2011 outlook for income and an in-depth outlook for regional agriculture, manufacturing, and construction activity. Our comments will relate to the Federal Reserve's 9th District, which includes Montana, the Dakotas, Minnesota, the northwest portion of Wisconsin, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Information used in this briefing comes from a multiple of sources. We obtain information by conducting surveys in October and November. Every quarter, we survey ag lenders to see how their farm customers are doing. In our annual business outlook poll, we asked 408 business leaders across the district for their predictions for the U.S. economy and their community's economy, as well as the outlook for their own businesses. In addition, in partnership with the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, we surveyed 478 manufacturers throughout the district. In these surveys, we asked special questions regarding the credit crisis. We also wanted to find out more about business confidence, so we conducted an additional survey. In conjunction with the State Chambers of Commerce in Minnesota, Montana, and the Dakotas, we received insights from over 730 businesses. To get a more objective reading about future performance, we also use statistical forecast models. These models use historical information and mathematical equations to predict the future. Models in general have a very difficult time predicting turning points because they rely on historical trends and data patterns that do not systematically repeat themselves, as this last recession clearly showed. And to give you more information on the economic outlook for the 9th District, here is Rob Grunwald, our associate economist.
The Minneapolis Fed's regional models forecast employment growth, unemployment rate, personal income growth, and growth in housing units authorized based on trends in historical national and state data. Compared with 2010 data with last year's forecast, shows that 2010 performed slightly better than forecasts made a year ago. Job growth was about the same as forecast a year ago. The unemployment rate was slightly lower than forecast. Personal income was close to forecast. And housing units authorized increased somewhat instead of decreased, as was forecast. Last year, the forecasting models predicted a moderate recovery from a deep and protracted recession. It seems the district economy in 2010 was consistent with that prediction. This chart shows the actual and forecast results for non-farm employment growth combined across 5 district states. You can see that forecasting is not an exact science. Although actual employment growth for 2010 was close to predictions a year ago, on average, the model forecasts have been within 0.9 percentage points since 1998. This chart shows the actual and forecast numbers for the unemployment rate across 5 district states. Actual unemployment rates for district states in 2010 outperformed predictions from a year ago. On average, the model forecasts have been within 0.5 percentage points since 1998. The forecasting models use a confidence interval to estimate a range in which 70% of the expected outcomes would fall. The National Bureau of Economic Research determined that the 18-month recession that began in December 2007 came to an end in June 2009. Since third quarter 2009, the U.S. economy has grown for 5 straight quarters at an annual average rate of 2.9%. This is a respectable rate of growth, but not as robust as post-recession growth observed after other recessions. Growth in employment following this most recent recession has also been slower than during previous recoveries. Since the beginning of the 2007-2009 recession, the Minneapolis Fed has created a web resource to track how the recent recession compares with other recessions since World War II, particularly in terms of length and depth. This resource also shows differences in GDP growth and employment in post-recession recoveries. Web users can plot changes in employment and GDP from the month that either the recession or recovery began, compared with any of the 10 other recessions and recoveries since World War II. Data are available for the nation and states. As you can see in this chart, employment growth during the most recent recovery has been slow, continuing to drop after 2009 for the first 6 months, after which employment started to grow again. Employment trends during the current recovery are similar to those following the 2001 and 1990-1991 recessions, when it took several months for employment to gain traction. In contrast, employment following the deep 1981-1982 recession bounced back relatively quickly. This chart plots changes in employment since the beginning of the recovery for district states. Non-farm employment decreased in all district states except North Dakota, which was also the only district state where employment levels did not dip below pre-recession levels. However, during the past 8 months, employment has begun to grow in all district states except Montana, where employment levels have fallen. Employment has exceeded pre-recovery levels in the Dakotas and Minnesota. That may be better than most district states, but in Minnesota, employment remains 3.6% below its pre-recession level. In October, district non-farm employment was almost 1% ahead of last year, better than the 0.5% increase for the nation. Employment gains were led by natural resources and mining, which increased more than 16%. North Dakota added 2,400 new jobs in this sector, as oil drilling activity remained strong. In November, 139 oil rigs were active in North Dakota, up from 56 a year ago. Other sectors with employment gains include professional and business services, manufacturing, education and health services, and leisure and hospitality. Meanwhile, the construction sector posted the largest decrease, a steeper decline than national construction totals. Montana posted an almost 1% decrease in non-farm employment in October, while employment in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Dakotas increased. Montana's construction sector shed a higher percentage of jobs than other district states. In addition, professional and business services, education and health services, and leisure and hospitality in Montana posted decreases or modest gains, while the rest of the district showed increases. Overall, Montana's recovery has been weaker than other areas of the district and the nation. Unemployment rates in district states have inched down from relatively high levels during the recession. The exception is Montana, where the unemployment rate has been increasing. District state unemployment rates are well below the nation's. The one exception, which is not listed in this chart, is the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which has a double-digit unemployment rate. Upper Peninsula businesses that support the auto industry were affected by troubles in Lower Michigan during the recession. Since the start of the recession, credit conditions have tightened. A year ago, respondents to 2 district surveys of manufacturers and business leaders revealed that between 25 and 35% had seen their access to credit worsen in the previous 3 months, and about 4% had easier access to credit. This year, we asked the survey respondents a similar question and found some improvement in the results. About 20% noted that credit availability worsened, and about 12% had easier access to credit. This suggests that credit conditions may be leveling out, which may have a positive impact on hiring and investment decisions. And now for the regional forecast. The mild economic recovery currently underway is expected to warm up in 2011, according to the results from the Minneapolis Fed's forecasting models and outlook surveys. Businesses are more optimistic, as respondents to the Minneapolis Fed's Business Outlook poll have expressed renewed optimism following 2 years of pessimism. Employment levels are expected to increase in all states in the district in 2011, but unemployment rates are predicted to stay about the same. Meanwhile, small wage increases are expected. Among industry sectors, agriculture and manufacturing are anticipated to grow, while the home building slowdown will likely continue. Underlying our overall positive report is optimism expressed by respondents to the Business Outlook poll, where 63% were somewhat or very optimistic for their community's economy during 2011, up from 42% in last year's poll. This level of optimism hasn't been recorded since the 2007 Outlook poll. According to the Business Confidence Survey, businesses are confident that their firm's performance will improve in 2011 compared with 2010. They are also confident that their communities will do well. However, they are less confident about their state and national economic performance. Responses were generally similar across district states. However, there were some nuances. For example, responses from North and South Dakota were similar and more positive compared with those from Montana and Minnesota. Not necessarily surprising, given that the Dakotas fared better than their district neighbors during the recession and subsequent slow recovery. This chart shows prospects for employment growth in 2011 based on results from the Minneapolis Fed statistical models. Note that the Wisconsin forecast is for the entire state, not just the 9th District portion. In 2011, employment is predicted to increase in all areas of the district. Growth rates will exceed 2010 rates in all areas except Minnesota, where the pace of employment growth will remain the same. In addition, employment is expected to reach or exceed 30-year historical averages in all areas, except South Dakota, where the growth rate may fall just below that average. When we asked business leaders in November about hiring plans at their own companies, respondents overall indicated that they anticipated increases in employment next year. This chart is a diffusion index. Index numbers over 50 indicate expansion, while numbers below 50 indicate contraction. During 2011, increases in employment are expected in all sectors, including a very slight increase in construction employment. Employment expectations from agriculture are positive for 2011, but subdued somewhat from a year ago. As we showed earlier, employment rates have stepped down in several district states. However, unemployment rates are not expected to move much in 2011. Unemployment rates will remain above historical averages in all states except North Dakota. Due to relatively weak demand for labor, wage growth during the past year was subdued. Looking ahead, almost all respondents expect wage growth of 3% or below in 2011, with 50% expecting wage growth of between only 0 and 1%. And now Toby will provide other predictions for the 2010 economy.